Oh, what? We just got one audio track. That's exciting.
Well,
I hope we're good.
I didn't want to I didn't want to mess around because this computer's being iffy.
It's so bad. We just have to start recording our audio on like a wax cylinder. Some analog.
Like,
We gotta bring up some analog.
very
technology.
dependable. It's very dependable.
Analog technology is it doesn't, you don't have to worry about updating your drivers.
No, that's
it just
true.
Works. It just works. So we've been gone for a while.
We've been.
We weren't up to date cinephiles. I was on the DL. I was out for.
I'm up to date. I just haven't talked.
Well, we're not keeping the people up to date.
We're not keeping people up to
you
date. That's
up to date.
That's true.
I was not up to date. I was out to lunch.
You had things.
I had things going on. Like I said, I was on the DL. I was out of commission. There weren't a lot of movies getting released anyways. But here we are. We're back. We're back with the new season of Up-to-Date Cinephile.
Season 2. I don't even think that there is.
Well, we
seasons.
took a break, so we'll say it's like a new season.
That
makes it seem like it was intentional.
Yes. Very intentional.
And
January, February, garbage.
We're also turning over a new leaf. We will spoil all the movies. We're doing no spoiler reviews because we suck at them. We're not good at that.
We're not.
If you're gonna listen to us ramble for however long about movies, you've either seen the movie or you don't care. If you're really worried about spoilers, do not watch this. I don't think. Well, I don't know how we'd spoil at least one of these movies, but I guess we could with all its big surprises.
Sure.
But so we're talking about what? We're talking about the Batman.
The Batman.
Yes.
Definitive.
This is it. He's the one.
Finally,
after so many tries, they found him. He was a refugee from a Cure cover band, and they discovered him. And they say
easy pop shots at the emo version.
Oh, I love the eye makeup.
Oh,
it's one of my favorite parts.
You gotta. Well, I mean, because it has to. You're gonna wear those masks.
I love it. I don't know why he ever takes it off.
I don't know why. Yeah.
It looks gorgeous on him. Gives his face a little excitement because Robert's looking a little pale. He's looking a little.
Yeah, I
feel like he needs to get some sun.
He's British though, so I mean, the pale runs in that. Yeah, but
a lot of those Brits love to go to the beach. They love to go to Ibiza or the south of Portugal and get a little tan. Right? I mean, you'll see some tanned Brits. I mean,
you're right.
You're right. The United Kingdom is a gray and pallid place.
Yeah.
And he certainly is giving that energy. And then we're going to talk about After Yang.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Which is
very excited to talk about.
Okay. That. So let's do the Batman first. Let's see if we can clear this out. So the Batman is a movie.
It is a movie.
A lot of people
are seeing
it.
It's a very long movie.
It's 3 hours long. It's about as long as The Godfather. It's lit like The Godfather, which is another parallel to The Godfather.
More rainy than The Godfather.
That's true. You don't get a lot of sunny days. You don't get a wedding sequence level sunny day.
No, Gotham is very moist.
Yeah, I guess it's supposed to be New York, but it's more Seattle, I guess, in that way. It's just very wet. It's a very wet city. Or London, right? Since we're talking about the Brits. Very wet, very cloudy, not a lot of sun shining on Gotham City.
I will say, when it comes to the portrayal of Gotham as an entity and a character, I did like this version versus some of the Nolan films, which it's just Chicago, it's just New York, it's just pieces. It doesn't have like a characterization, at least beyond Batman Begins.
Yeah, this is definitely a more cartoonishly evil town.
Yes,
this is more a place that you just wonder. Like the town in Buffy or the planet Earth in Marvel movies. You wonder why anyone would ever choose to live there.
Yeah, it seems miserable.
There's too much bad shit. You need to, when Catwoman's like, I'm going upstate, you're like, goddamn, why isn't everybody going upstate?
Yeah.
Why isn't everybody going somewhere else?
Somewhere else, yeah. It reminded me, I don't know, did you ever watch the Batman animated series?
I did not.
Bruce Timm
I've
and
seen,
Eric
I've
Radomski?
seen like one-off episodes.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with it as.
That one has that very Art Deco noir that gives that tinge, that the detective quality, and I felt like they were exaggerating that form here almost to the kind of grimy state. Like it was trying to take noir to a beyond psychological, trying to hint at something that's dark and devious, but they were just going to make it very explicit.
So this is good. I'm glad you used the word noir, because I've heard people using the word noir a lot, which I think people literally just mean dark by that. You just did a whole season of noirs. I don't know if this movie is a noir in any meaningful sense.
Well, noir comes out of a very particular history of trying to decipher the anxieties and fears of like post-war America. Like there's proto-noirs that come before it, like during the Great Depression, and there's kind of a desperation. There is there's a mood there, and they're trying to express that through cinema and through stylistic form, but also through story. And so can the Batman be a noir in a kind of a reflection of mood, anxiety, fear when it's a artificial place?
Well, but also I mean I think he could.
Sure.
But I mean I just feel structurally like this movie is more like a Western or a kung fu movie than it is a noir. I mean, the Batman is a total blank character. He's not. Sure. He's as in the Nolan movies. He's extremely boring. He's a completely flat and uninteresting character. He's just this force that blows through the movie. I mean, him and the main villain.
He's vengeance. He has to blow through the movie.
Well, but but I mean, he's Anton Chigurh, right? Except you have he is. You have two Anton Chigurhs in this movie, right? You have him and the main villain, the Riddler, played by Paul Dano.
The Riddler.
And well, I mean, whatever. This is fucking, I don't even know. We got to talk about this movie. And they're both the same.
I feel like I'm putting you through pain.
They're both the same. No, I think there's something really important about this movie, and we're gonna get at it.
Good.
But I don't like this movie. I think this movie is quite bad. But this might be the first time you like one of these more than me. I sense that you liked this more than I did.
I think I'm...
which is good. You should occasionally like one more than me.
I suppose so. I think as an appreciator of the comics and just for the comic art form and where this...
Are you an appreciator?
Appreciator. I have to give it the accentuation.
That should be your title. I'm gonna get you a business card printed up. Appreciate. I don't know how to spell it though. T-O-U-R, T-E-U-R, like if it's French. Mm-hmm. Appreciateur.
Sure. T-E-T-E-U-R. Yeah. I think that fits my description quite. No, but I am a fan of the comics. I grew up with Batman, the animated series, the Burton films, even the Adam West television show. I like the idea of Batman, and I think where I'm going to come into agreement is that this version, while I appreciate some of its narrative choices, such as an investigative Batman, rather than a berserker, brute force Batman.
Yeah, it is a sort of... I mean, there's a lot... genre-wise, there's a lot going on in this movie, right? Yeah. Because, I guess, like I said, I question how much it's noir in the sort of story sense. I understand what people are talking about.
Yeah, it's more thriller than it is noir, which there is a distinct spin difference.
But I mean, this Batman is kind of as far as they've even gone to like a man with no name, right? Just kind of doesn't say much, doesn't kind of have much of an affect. Mm-hmm. Doesn't.
It's kind of a muted. Muted performance.
Movies, even with Christian Bale, they give the Bruce Wayne aspect a little more depth to it. This
flair.
This Bruce Wayne has no more affect than when
Batman.
He's Batman, right? I mean, he's just sort of generally dour and emo, right? That's kind of his state throughout the entire movie with no real change.
Yeah, he is perpetually miserable, as is the setting, and it's all reflection of each other.
Yes, and anything that brings sort of color or levels or contrast is coming from somewhere else, right? And so
mostly from side characters who give vibrancy and color to the world.
This is not surprising, right? No. I mean, although it's interesting to me that you have both the main the protagonist and the main antagonist are both this. They're both sort of flat, kind of nihilistic. I mean, here's what's interesting to me about this movie, or what sort of... Well, we're going to get to what it says, or what it means. But, in the 1980s, Alan Moore wrote Watchmen.
Yeah.
And the character he created to parody or comment on Batman is a character called Rorschach, right? You're familiar with Rorschach if you've seen the movie, or if you've read the comic. Rorschach is this moralistic, but also kind of nihilistic and psychotic character, right?
Yeah.
Who, and you don't need to know anything about Rorschach at the end of the day, because now you do know Rorschach, because this Batman is Rorschach, and also the main antagonist, the Riddler, is Rorschach. The movie is even aware of this, which is what was shocking to me, because at one point, Catwoman basically says to Batman, "I think you'd be with the Riddler because of who he's killing, because of who he's taking."
Yeah.
So she essentially realizes that these are two highly moralistic and vicious people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The
similarities, the mirror images.
I know that moralistic
direct.
and nihilistic don't necessarily hang well together. They're people who look at the world and see something so disgusting and vile that they feel moved to vengeance, but that movement to vengeance has a kind of disregard to it.
Yeah.
Basically a sort of, well, anything goes, because this world is so broken that it just needs to be intervened on with tremendous violence.
Yeah, violence,
right?
force, will. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The world is just so broken that the only answer is someone who is willing to do terrible things that are on their face evil, to somehow reset the world, right? Or shake it back into some better state.
Yeah.
So what we've seen over the course of, from the 80s until now, is the Batman character become ever closer to being Rorschach, to the point that he just is Rorschach.
Yeah.
He's absolutely Rorschach.
Yeah. Well,
He just is totally... He is devoid of any human characteristics that are non-psychotic.
Yes.
Right? He's a psychotic character.
Yeah. No, this is very true. And you bring up Alan Moore, and I think it's because of the change in the 80s, early 90s in Batman comics, is that he also wrote The Killing Joke, and which really, it had a hypothesis that the Joker and Batman are kind of like one and the same. Like they are kind of reflection,
which is a
mirror
theme
images.
we see rehashed in The Dark Knight, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are you gonna do without me?
Yeah.
I'm so important. Your whole life is defined in opposition to me.
Yeah.
But the difference is we've gone from that, right, to a character who's defined not in opposition to any specific figure, right?
Mm-hmm.
But who's just defined in opposition to basically everything. Like
Yeah.
the whole just the whole thing is just so disgusting to him, right? And you just, it's very interesting to me as a sort of social document, right? That a movie like this is both very popular, right? Going to make a lot of money.
Already has spin-offs in the works and all that.
And also gets a lot of critical praise.
Mm-hmm.
And my theory about why it gets critical praise, I have more clarity on that than why it makes money. It gets critical praise because amongst the sort of broadly establishment, Democrat, liberal press that writes movie reviews, a really bleak outlook is basically how they feel.
Yeah.
They feel that the world is run by stupid people, and that we're all stupid and we're going to get what we deserve.
Sure.
Right? Because we're not enlightened. And so they secretly, which is why you've seen, Democrats fall in love now with the FBI, the CIA, the military, because they secretly believe that we do need and not even so secretly, they're pretty open about it now, that we do need this strong hand. Right? So they pine for the Batman. Right?
I think a lot of people do in an unsettling way.
But that used to be a sort of a right wing thing. You would think, like wanting an authoritarian. You know, the whole how the line on all these wars, like Vietnam. You know, if they just let them the generals get in there and do what they wanted to do, it would all be fine. You know, this idea that some strong father figure can descend upon us and sort of solve our problems because we're too stupid or misguided or, you know, tricked by the pictures on the screen, right? But now that's a pretty widespread view. I mean, we've talked about this over and over again. We talked about it a lot in the totalitarianism season. Everybody thinks that somebody else is fucking evil.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody thinks that there's some person out there that's evil and just needs to be stopped at all costs.
Yeah, yeah. And that, whether it is, and I think the division comes very, in a populist sense, right-wing conservatism at this time thinks there's corruption, thinks that there is too much power,
well,
therefore we need an outside
stuck in their
force.
head, right? Like, these motherfuckers still talk about Hillary Clinton, right?
Yeah.
Who's been in, you know, who's had no position of power for a decade now.
Yeah, almost.
So she left the State Department, right?
Yeah.
Which isn't to say she's not a powerful person, and I find her pretty loathsome, but, you know, like, yeah, they're still obsessed with Hillary Clinton. Democrats are obsessed with Donald Trump. It's just everyone believes that there's some evil person out there that just needs to be stopped.
Yeah.
And, you know, no matter what you got to do.
Yeah.
You got to stop this person.
And that is what Batman is kind of an embodiment of that will and force because it's independent from systems. He is he has dismay with the systems. He's in this idea. I think that there's a level of a reflection of our modern time in this particular movie is that it's just so filled to the brim with corruption. You have the DA, you have you have the police. Like everybody seems to be in the pockets of powerful money laundering systems that puts into question the whole system and its fairness and the justice and all of that aspect. No, and what I'm saying is that all of this is very superficial. It's so vague and superficial, but a lot of people from different scopes, different ideologies can attach themselves to this rage-centric idea. This is a Batman of rage, and so I think that they really attach themselves to this idea, and I think that is very intoxicating for people.
Oh, of course. Everyone, you know, sometimes fantasizes about being that person or being able to just, you know, even look at what's going on with Ukraine, right? It's like, oh, if we could just kill Putin, right? It's just like this fantasia that somehow there's a person, and if you can kill that person, right? This was the fantasia of our wars, you know, especially in Afghanistan, right? Is this idea if we can just find the list of 50 people and take them out, then it's all going to be okay. And of course, that's incredibly stupid and short-sighted. I mean, there is an honesty though municipal governments are often very corrupt in roughly the way that this movie sort of lays out with the whole, like, what is it called? Like the renewal fund. Like all this money just kind of goes into a slush fund and everybody's got their hand out and everybody gets to take a you know, to wet their beak. Right? That's happening. That's happening.
Oh, yeah.
That's happening right now.
Yeah.
And I don't think I don't have a problem with cynicism. I just think you have to direct your cynicism in the right places. I have no problem with directing my cynicism at government or at powerful people. I think they're well worthy of it. But the funny thing about this movie is that only the Riddler has any sort of idea of a solution, right? The Batman just is, he just kind of is twisting in the wind, right?
Well, and they make it, I mean, basically he is just the brute force arm of the Riddler. Like he utilizes him to his advantage.
Yes.
I mean, that's the whole kind of twist on the thriller is that Batman is so, I suppose, blinded by his own just perpetual movement forward that he doesn't see that he's actually just aiding in the process and aiding in the pieces, which I think is a clever idea with how the villain and hero relationship and dynamic is played out in this movie. I think I agree with you. There is just such an exhaustion with that storyline. There's an exhaustion to a 3-hour runtime that is so monotone, so flatlined that there's no lift. There's no emotional lift. There's no dynamic lift in action. In the actions, even the action set pieces feel like it runs in molasses. Like so, there's just a slowness and a lack of inertia in this movie that any of its positive elements that you could pinpoint and pick out get suffocated by its longevity.
Well, but I think you've sort of alighted on the issue with this whole stream of Batman movies, which is that it's just a one-way ratchet of darkness.
Yeah,
that's all you can do is just this.
And this has gotten it to its culmination, like its logical culmination.
And also, there's no new ideas, right? I mean, the opening sequence with everybody going around with the masks was just obviously straight out of of Dark Knight, right? I mean, I understand that this was like a more diffuse kind of bad people versus like a specific heist, but it was the exact same feel.
Yeah,
like just surrounded by these masked people, many of whom are bad, maybe some of them aren't because it's Halloween. It's just, it's the same shit. It's just the same shit. But it's even more confused. This is the thing. So this opening sequence is so schizophrenic and bizarre that, like, just here's what happens, right? The bat signal gets thrown up, right? And you get, music and this voiceover from Batman. And some villains see the bat signal. Like, one guy's doing tagging, and he sees it, and the moment he sees it, he's so afraid that Batman is going to come beat the shit out of him because he's tagging that he drops it and, like, just runs away. He drops his spray paint can.
Yeah.
And then the Batman actually shows up with some random goons with face paint who are going to beat up some poor dude on the train, or who they chased off the train. And they're like, who the fuck are you? I'm like, so the tagger is so afraid of just the idea of the Batman that the bat signal makes him drop his can of paint. But this gang of goons, like, they don't know who he is.
Yeah. There's a weird disconnect.
And then you get to the cops. They all know who he is, and they all hate him.
Yeah, which I like. I like that dynamic.
I think that was true to life in the sense that, yes, cops hate people trying to do their job. They hate vigilantes. Cops basically hate most people.
Yeah.
Right? And so I thought that was, fine enough, right? But even then, the relationships, I mean, like, it's just some of the relationships. I mean, I guess, I don't know, maybe you can give him the Gordon relationship because maybe they have history, but, like, the romantic relationship with Catwoman just feels so shoehorned in.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's such an unpleasant and unlikable person.
Yeah.
Like, what? I was just sitting there thinking, you could do a lot better.
Well, maybe she's damaged. Maybe she's.
But it's not even interestingly damaged.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Right, because I mean, all of a sudden they're kissing. It literally comes out of nowhere and it goes back to nowhere, except it provides some sort of the later movie motivation where it's implied that the Batman, he cares about Catwoman, so that's going to affect
people
some
have
of his actions.
Described this movie as like a sexy Batman, and I'm like, I don't know where you find that.
I mean, Zoe Kravitz is ravishing.
Well, sure,
but like their
chemistry is forced.
She is sexy and probably the best part of this movie. I mean, like you said, all the good work is happening around,
around the central plot.
Zoe Kravitz. There isn't anything equivalent of like Heath Ledger's Joker in terms of like a star turn, but she's very compelling. She is the most interesting character. Catwoman is generally, to my mind, the most interesting character in the Batman universe. It's the one character they allow to be sort of gray, right, and kind of working at somewhat. And yet, working somewhat differently than Batman or the villains.
Nobody's going to do a better job than the dynamic between Keaton and Pfeiffer in Batman Returns. Because that in that one, he's like trying to save her soul, and it's all for naught. Like she's too far gone. Like it is such a interesting play and pull between their attraction and their fealty, and then their ideas of what they want to do in these costumes, what they represent. And so it's a wonderful dynamic that will never be captured again.
Oh yeah, no, their dynamic is better, but she is just very magnetic.
Oh no,
and
I agree.
dynamic.
No disagreement on Zoe
Colin
Kravitz.
Farrell completely disappears into that character.
Colin Farrell. I'm
He's
hoping
the star of today's episode, definitely.
Oh yes, absolutely. I hope, because I've been an advocate for Colin Farrell, and I think a lot of cinephiles have been ever since like In Bruges kind of brought a revitalization to his career. But even early on, like Tigerland, he was very good. I mean, he just got some unfortunate launching into the stratosphere casting in like blockbusters such as like Daredevil and Phone Booth. Joel Schumacher's Phone Booth is like not very good.
See, I kind of like Phone Booth.
It's fine.
I'll put in a good word for Phone Booth.
All right, you put in a good word.
At least
for
it's
Phone
not 3 hours long. I'll say that for it.
That one's very short, actually. I think that was like an hour and a half.
It'd be a tight 90-minute movie.
Yeah. Oh, it's missing. Maybe it's because of Kiefer Sutherland. I don't like that movie.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's a masterpiece. I'm just saying that I found it to be a taut sort of engaging film.
But he has had a revitalization, I think, ever since In Bruges. I mean, you get even, I know Woody Allen's, not welcome, but Cassandra's Dream he was really good in, and then he would go on, be in The Lobster, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. This guy, I think, is one of our finest actors, and his embodiment, prosthetics or not, I think just in voice, in body movement, his penguin
is unrecognizable.
His unrecognizable, and his penguin is superb. It is so comic accurate. It is just a brimming with personality and grimy
and
nastiness.
Respect
I love it.
to all the technical people, because that is the pitch perfect.
Yes.
Like, it's funny because I saw a trailer for the Elvis movie where Tom Hanks plays
looks rough,
the colonel or whoever that dude was.
Yeah.
And he's in a fat suit. It does not look right.
No, does not look.
Because it looks too much like him.
Yeah.
It's just like him. It's clearly him in a fat suit.
It almost is like a fat person that they deep faked. Like
it looks wrong. Whereas this character looks totally fully realized.
Yeah.
It looks like an actual person who looks nothing like Colin.
No, it is stunning.
Kudos to him for his acting, and kudos to all the many technical people who I'm sure made that happen.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you get Dano and you get Turturro. These guys are pros. They're doing pro work.
I thought Turturro was a little miscast.
You think so?
Yeah, maybe it doesn't help that every time I see Turturro trying to be like a gangster type, I think back to Do the Right Thing, and I'm like, oh, it's just Daniello's kid grown up trying to be a big boss. Like, and I'm just like, I just don't buy it. I don't know. Like, he's always good.
I thought
but
the understatedness of it worked, though.
Sure.
See, he didn't seem hopped up to me. He seemed very low key, which I think served whatever sort of reveal there was going to be about that character.
Yeah.
And also stood in contrast to the Penguin, who is more, of the
right.
villains in the movie, him and Riddler are so outsized and weird. Penguin and Riddler are so outsized and weird that to have him be a little more understated, I thought it sort of, I think it grounded the movie in the way that the movie wanted to be grounded. Because if you have if everyone is more and more cartoonish, then we start to get into Burton Schumacher territory. And I actually don't have a problem with that, but it's not what this movie was going for.
Sure.
So I thought having him more grounded worked. But the movie was just, I had a laugh at what I thought was a funny moment. I don't think anyone else laughed, which is when Alfred wakes up. Played very serviceably also by
I think he is the worst casting.
Do you think he's the worst? The character is a little boring.
I don't know.
It's hard, right? Because the last person to do that shit was Michael Caine, and that's a tough.
Well, Jeremy Irons. I like Jeremy Irons as Alfred in the Snyder version.
I didn't even.
You didn't bother.
I like Jeremy Irons as an actor.
I know what they're doing. They're doing the Alfred who has a military history, a little hard edge.
Kind of understated.
Yeah, but I didn't buy it.
They didn't give him a lot to do.
That's very true.
Fair. But I laughed when he wakes up out of whatever sort of coma he's in, and immediately, without even a beat, he's like, why did you lie to me? Like, I thought that was just a hilarious thing to say right at that moment as the guy's emerging from, having just been blown up thanks to you and has been in some sort of a coma.
Yeah.
Just without even a beat.
Yeah.
Why have you been lying to me?
Yeah. No. Are you okay?
Funny, my Batman voice is heading towards Shaquille O'Neal, which is not. Why'd you lie to me? I mean,
can you dig it?
Oh God! I mean, I just thought that was funny to just deadpan that line across.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was maybe the only one.
The whole movie is so overwrought in self-seriousness. I think this, which at some point will emerge into, just you will mock it. Like I don't think a lot of this movie works in the kind of tone that they think it is trying to accomplish.
Well, I think what this movie does, right, combined with our baton death march through Marvel movies, is you see the sort of divergent paths of how you can cope with the world if you're sad, right? Because that's what all these superhero movies are ultimately about, is we're sad and we're desperate and we're looking for something from our entertainment to help us deal with that. So you have the Marvel movies, which are kind of this high romanticism, Greek gods doing battle against evil every other day. The world is going to end, but these fundamentally good heroes are going to save us. They're going to rise to the occasion. They're going to have some nice, one-liners and zingers along the way.
At least we hope.
All this fake bonhomie, right? And then you have complete acceptance of the sort of cascade into oblivion, which is what DC is now giving us.
Yeah.
Right. So, to me, it's interesting in that it does raise a question about how depressed we are and how our popular culture reflects that depression and that sense of hopelessness. Because that's one thing that these movies all carry through them, is a sense of, wanting a hero, and then it's just kind of the terms on which you think you can get a hero. Like in Batman, you might get a hero, but it's not going to be good enough. I mean, that's even part of Batman's spiel. Like, I can't be everywhere. That's essentially what he says.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dark corners in this city. I can't be in them all, or whatever. Versus this idea that, well, maybe these gods will come along. Which is, I mean, there are characters in the DC world like that. Superman, most obviously, right?
Yeah.
But also Superman's been one that they've had the hardest time with.
Yeah.
Because he's harder. The Batman thing, clearly they know how to make the movie.
Yeah.
In a way that will get them a sufficient amount of critical acclaim and a sufficient amount of audience buy-in. And so, of course, they're going to keep going back to that formula, because when they've tried other formulas, it hasn't worked as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess some people liked the new Suicide Squad movie, the James Gunn one.
I guess.
But,
fine.
But the truth is they're just going to go with their formula. Marvel's going to go with its formula. And, it's funny. I started reading comic books again recently. And I started with the current run of X-Men, which is really good.
Yeah.
And really interesting. And
X-Men's always been
really
prime.
Weird, right? It's really weird because the essential premise of it is, like, what would happen if we sort of reshuffled the world and tried to create a kind of mutant utopia?
Mm-hmm.
So it's asking the opposite questions that all these movies are, because these movies are all about dystopia and avoiding the worst possible outcomes, right? And they're asking, like, what could we do to make, like, a beautiful world for mutants? And of course there is conflict and sabotage and darkness and all of that, but it's very engaged. And I think that's the beauty of comic books, is that they can engage at their best with very interesting, intricate, weird questions, right? But do it in a visual way. It's harder to do that in movies, right? Because movies are so bombastic, right? Especially superhero movies, that there's very rarely anything subtle or interesting on that level. So I think that there is real potential in superhero stories.
I do agree.
I just think that it's hard. It's proving hard to actualize that potential in films, in part because of the limitations of the medium, and also I think it's very market driven. Right? Everyone sort of knows what works, and they're going to keep doing it. They've alighted on the formula, right? I mean, so I think that we're just in for a lot more of this, and of course we know that. That's not like any sort of surprise or revelation. But I just leave a movie like this feeling very just down. Just feeling like this is just such a grim, unpleasant, and it's not interestingly so.
No.
Right?
No.
And we're not breaking any new ground here.
No.
Right?
Not at all.
I know I'm not we like, there's plenty of dark movies we like, disturbing movies we like. But I mean, we just talked on your podcast about Escape from New York, which is a very dark movie.
Yeah.
But it's also fun, and it's funny.
There is
and it's kind of at points ridiculous, right? In a good way.
This is a very good point, because there is zero sense of enjoyment that this movie is having.
It's so anhedonic.
Yeah.
This movie is not interested in delivering any pleasure.
None.
Right? Which is why, as much as we can sometimes bag on like certain things about the new Spider-Man movie that we didn't like, I'd watch that movie again way before I'd watch this movie again.
I totally agree.
Because I know that at least I'll get some yucks, and there's some fun, right? And there's some like levels to it. Well, right? I enjoyed the one scene with Hannibal Buress and what JB Smoove and
Martin Starr. Yeah,
I enjoyed that more than I enjoyed any aspect of this movie. Right, just this one throwaway comedic scene with three funny dudes being goofy.
Yeah,
right. Well, I mean, at least there I could think like, oh, I laughed and I felt I gained some cinematic pleasure.
Yeah,
from this
movie. I don't understand why they went down this self-serious... essentially it's David Fincher's Zodiac set into a fictional world, which almost numbs the impact of what was...
less interesting characters.
Yeah, exactly.
And less interesting
dynamics or narrative, and what's driving the obsession of the investigators at the center of that.
It's all poor man's David... That's absolutely right. It's all poor man's David Fincher.
Yeah.
It's just... Well, we'll just do it dark. Like, we'll take some stylistic cues, but without any of the interesting sort of ambiguity and kind of cleverness he brings to his work.
Yeah,
right?
and that's what's so bothersome. It's like, for me, the Riddler storyline with him being a serial killer and leaving riddles as clues, I mean, that's a take. I mean, that is an exaggeration. He never was like a serial killer in the comics. Maybe there's some... I haven't read all of them, so maybe there are some deviations, but he's usually like a bank robber, leaves clues. It's almost like an eccentricity. And in this movie, they take it into like a grim psychosis, and Paul Dano plays it very well. I just, out of all the choices, they clearly went with a recognizable name and an inversion on that name because of what you're talking about, marketing. It's just a marketable quality. It's like, oh, here's this dark rendition on the Riddler, when they could have done a lesser-known villain like Hush, who targets Bruce Wayne, targets the city, and is exactly that philosophy. And it's because they don't take the riskier road, because they don't do Hush, because and now they're talking about doing Hush, which would just be a repeat of the same kind of mentality and philosophy, which would be so utterly boring. But I feel like boring gets down to the core of what they're doing, because it's so learned from everything else. It's just a trajectory into the darkness. It's just a constant downward spiral into that. I mean, that's what happened. It's like you have Adam West, and then it's like Tim Burton's like, well, I'm going to make it a little darker, but a little quirky and cartoonish, but like it's kind of my German expression is bent on this expression. And then, Joel Schumacher kind of carried that into very cartoon, and then Nolan has to bring it down to gritty, grim, dark reality, realistic, which snuffs out so much possibility that this world can have in a kind of exaggerated form. What can be fun and enjoyable and exaggerated for this world. And then Snyder takes it even darker, a brooding, almost murderous, berserker kind of Batman. And now the logical extension is just pure darkness. And it's shot in bleakness. It is just constant bleakness.
Even their take on, like, you know, his house is just hilarious.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was where I started to feel like, come on. Because it's so gothic and bizarre. Yeah. Right? It looks like no place any humans live anymore.
No. It's
just... It makes, you know... like the sets from a movie that's meant to be in Buckingham Palace look sort of spare by comparison.
Yeah.
It's just so... You know, it's just this overwrought is the right word.
It is.
I mean, so here's the thing. Here's my final thought about this.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, one of the subplots in the movie is it's about a mayoral race. After the incumbent mayor is murdered, you have this character, Bella Real, who's going to win. I mean, she's really the last person standing.
Only gets 98% of the vote.
I guess some people wrote in Donald Duck or whatever. I mean, so she's like a Saddam Hussein like acclamation. But I mean, you know, she's the only other candidate. She wins, and you know, there is this undercurrent in the movie about corruption. In this, like I said, a very realistic version of corruption, which is
absolutely
municipal money that kind of just sloshes around and people just get to scoop into through various, you know, deals. And someone who has some idea of how to reform that. And it just seems to me that you could put this character into a more ambiguous place vis-a-vis the other currents in the movie, and that they even hint at it where she tries to talk, like Bella Real tries to talk to Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And then they just drop they never close that loop because then more violence ensues. I just think that I just wonder if there will be anyone who comes in to try to say something a little more complex and interesting and nuanced.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the movie hints at it at the end where it's sort of the character development we get out of Bruce Wayne / Batman is his realization that he kind of needs to not be such a piece of shit, that he needs to
well, it's very on the nose.
It's a warmer, a kinder, gentler Batman or something.
Well, in the beginning he says he's vengeance. At the end he's literally the torchbearer of justice. Like he's like, I'm justice.
Yeah, well,
like, you know, and it's
the
like
big moment is where one of the Riddler's toadies says, "I'm vengeance," and he's like, "Shit, that's me, man. That's my line."
Shit.
And then he's, maybe I shouldn't be such a shithead. But I mean, I assume when they come out with the sequel, he's going to be every bit as dark and shitty as he was in this one. It's very hard to imagine otherwise.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like I have this hope that someone will come along and make a spectacle movie, because I like spectacle movies. I really do. I know that sometimes it sounds like I don't, but they'll come along and make a spectacle movie that is able to take these things in some sort of a new direction.
Yeah.
Right.
Because this is repetition. It is and it's interesting to see the glowing admiration for this movie on, say, social media at this moment. But I do attribute that to what my father once called recency. It's the latest iteration of anything has to be the best or your favorite because it's just in your mind, and there's
definitely recency bias. Well, and it's also an understandable reaction to nostalgia, right? Which
absolutely.
You have to listen to old people talk about how it was so much better. This was so you have to, that's fucking annoying.
Yeah.
So I think that it's a young person's understandable if distorted reaction to the nostalgia of older generations.
Sure. Well, and so I hope, and I don't know, it's if you do a different variation on Batman or a different contemplation of Batman, the unfortunate thing is that, you know, comics from Frank Miller, Jeff Loeb Alan Moore, they've done it. They've made the criticisms. They've done very, very interesting stories. Whether it's Long Halloween, whether it's Killing Joke, whether it's Year One. The comics are an avenue where if you really want to get into the troublesome, problematic, which Batman is a problematic, and I think this movie tries to address that. They try to address, he's a white privilege, rich, able to have this kind of stature in order to make a difference, whatever that is.
All just like throwaway stuff.
You're right. It is throwaway.
The movie doesn't engage with those issues. It simply flags them. And I think because they probably feel like they have to.
And
right,
I
given
think
the present political climate.
100%. And I think those throwaways are the wrong things to be focusing on. Because his philosophy can be problematic, and you need to venture that in its fullness. And I think this parallel, the mirror image of Riddler and Batman in this movie, taps into something, but not to the fullness that I would like, and certainly it is very simplistic. It is almost just fine-tuned down to something that's so vague and attributable that it's so, for me, it becomes uninteresting. So because this is exactly the kind of Batman movie I want. I want a moody, but with more sense of enjoyment than this movie. But I want a moody detective thriller. I like that aspect of Batman. I don't like necessarily when it gets into action set pieces. Some of them in this movie are okay and impressive in a choreography sense, but not necessarily. Again, there's no lift, there's no inertia. And so for me, there's something a little bland. Like I an hour into this movie with 2 hours to go, I was like, I am numbed already by its tone, by its atmosphere, by its monotone. It just the loud, abrasive score, Michael Giacchino's score.
It's just loud.
I love Greg Fraser as a cinematographer, and it looks good, but he's done better work in, say, like Dune he shot, which is excellent.
It's loud as fuck. It's just, it's very one note.
Yeah, and I think that's its main problem, is that for 3 hours, one note, monotone, no lift, no inertia.
And at the end, it's a little bit like, what's the uptake at the end? It's like, well, maybe I should be less of a piece of shit.
Yeah, maybe.
And then, of course, we get the setup for the sequel.
Yeah.
Shocker of Shocks.
Yeah. Shocker of Shocks.
Which is not really...
Which, again, if they go the Joker route, which... that's the hint, is that Barry Coogan, who I like.
Great actor.
He's a great actor. Killing of a Sacred Deer, Dunkirk, great actor. I have no doubt he could be a Joker, and he could be an interesting take. If they go with Joker in the second movie, I will be thoroughly bored. I don't care anymore about that. It's almost like you have to.
It's a well that never runs dry.
I know. It's really obnoxious. Well, I mean, so you didn't enjoy the Batman. I think I gave it some fair remarks in just a objective assessment.
I mean, you're gonna go see it. Go see it.
Yeah,
go see what you think.
I guess. I mean,
you probably already have seen it.
I definitely. I mean, the idea of going to see this again, either in a theater, seems like a chore. It's a chore.
There would have to be money on the table.
Yeah, you have to pay me.
There'd have to be money on the table. And then I'd do it. I'll do anything for money.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I think the potential of Batman serves as a prime example what comic book movies can have as a criticism of them. But, they just... I am floored by the idea that people are blown away by this movie. I think it's fine. People like stuff sometimes. Yeah, that's true. You know what do you do? And I like nothing. So, although I do like the next movie we're talking about.
Let's talk about Armageddon. Let's talk about a movie we like. How do we want to set this movie up? It's a A24 movie.
A24 sci-fi.
I think got a little bit of cinematic release, but not much.
Yeah, it's a very limited release.
It's on Showtime. You can stream it on Showtime.
Oh, that's great.
That's how I watched it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, no, I guess whatever, they cut some deal with Showtime to give it, streaming. So if you have access to Showtime, you can watch it.
Well, I can set it up by talking about the filmmaker a little bit, because this is only his second feature. But it's Kogonada. He is a film essayist and formalist on YouTube, and he's very famous for his channel. And he's South Korean American. He's very intelligent. If you watch his videos, you will learn a lot. He does assessments of aesthetic and form, and basically mise en scène is the appropriate term, and how things are expressed visually in the frame, and breaks it down. I think he did a Breaking Bad assessment. That's how he got his big start. But he is an interesting fellow, I think, a film intellectual, a cinephile, and he broke into the filming, storytelling world, but with Columbus, which I don't know if you've seen.
I have not seen Columbus.
So I highly recommend it. It's a very quiet movie, but it stars John Cho and Haley Lou Richardson, who's also in this movie, and it's about this. The divide between how life is very chaotic, that there's death, unexplainable things, and then it's juxtaposed with the order, beauty, and structure and reliability of architecture. And so it is this divide in life that these two people at the center of it, whose lives are a bit frayed and a bit chaotic, are having an appreciation for things that seem more orderly than their own lives. And so it's a very quiet, very lovely little film between two people. That's a romance, but it's more of a friendship. And you don't see a lot of movies, and you don't see a lot of movies done in this style, which he does these kind of reiterations of dialogue based, and he does it in this movie, as I'm sure you noticed, where he will relay from different perspectives kind of similar lines, and it's based off of the division of memory, and that people are reflecting on moments in different ways or experiencing them simultaneously, but maybe at a delay. And it is a fascinating approach, and he has turned, that was 5 years ago. He has now released his second feature, his sophomore effort. And I really liked how he blossomed and attributed his style, his form, his very static use of camera, but also very cinematic, very painterly. I mean, every image is very well articulated, and he uses that in this high brow cerebral sci-fi about consciousness and about family, about culture and history. There's a lot going on in this movie in mere suggestion, and yet very powerful. I had a very emotional response to this movie.
Well, yeah, as someone with a daughter, I mean, it was very moving.
Yeah.
Right, because my daughter is only a little bit younger.
Yeah.
Than the daughter in this movie. I mean, it's really, it's about a family of four, and then a few other sort of characters who kind of come in and out. And it's I found it deeply moving, and I think it's an excellent movie. I think this is an excellent movie, stem to stern, just a real masterclass in visual cinema, and also in how you can make a movie that is, this movie clocks in at slightly longer than half the length of the Batman. I think it's about an hour 36.
Yeah, hour 36. Yeah.
And it packs in a lot without ever seeming didactic, without ever offering any real easy answers. But it's quiet, and it sort of just insinuates itself into your mind.
Yeah.
In a very just calm way.
Yeah.
It doesn't rely on any real tricks. It doesn't ever, it lets the conflicts build up to just the right amount and resolve them in a very believable way without sort of relying on, kind of creating drama.
Yeah, there's no histrionics to this movie.
Yeah, and everybody sort of behaves in ways that are understandable and has to kind of deal with the fallout of how they behave in ways that are very realistic.
Yeah, and so just to give it a little setup, it does not really root you into everything that's going on in its world. There's a lot of suggestion because it's in the future. It's deeply into the future, and they have techno sapiens which are essentially replicants that are built in order to act as older siblings to integrate adopted children from China specifically, although I think that there are other models and there are other countries. But specifically why it's China is that there was a war between America and China, and I think it is they clearly, I think America won.
But that's, I mean, you must be getting that from some like
Yes.
backstory, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's never really addressed
No,
in
it's
the movie.
yeah.
It's
I
based
got
on a
this.
short story. Which,
It is based on a short story, and that is from the short story.
Yeah.
Is that there is a war between America and China, and they are adopting children who clearly cannot be raised in what is probably a dilapidated or a just destroyed China, or they're trying, and I think it is sort of an act of cultural appeasement. I think you get that, like that they are adopting, not also out of love, but also it's like, I'm sure the culture, and they feel bad, and so what is it there is a kind of appeasement in the construction of techno sapiens, the idea of preserving their heritage, the idea of they feel guilty, and I think that there is a form of guilt in this culture.
Yeah, I mean, but this is all familiar even now, right? I mean, a lot of kids get adopted from different countries,
Yeah.
who where, that are much poorer than us, and
Yeah.
get brought to America, and their adoptive parents have to negotiate how to both integrate them into our culture, but also respect and help them preserve an appreciation for the culture of their birth.
Yeah,
Right, so this is it's a very relatable
absolutely.
kind of premise. But
Yeah.
yes, the solution that they have available to them, or one of the solutions that they choose, is to have a replicant essentially,
Yeah.
who appears to be and is programmed to feel as though they're from China.
Yeah.
And
Has all this extensive knowledge and history.
and to to help their adopted child feel a connection to the country and culture of their birth.
Yeah. And what's, I think, very, very beautiful about the movie is that introducing this science fiction tool, essentially, that's what they treat it as. They treat it as a tool. Society treats it as a tool. I mean, how they discuss its decomposition and recycling is very dystopian, and it's like there's no humanistic qualities to them, that at least not how it is discussed. And what gets ignited is something familiar. I mean, it's been done before. Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, Alex Garland's Ex Machina. It's been done before, this idea of consciousness, and that artificial intelligence can become conscious, and therefore there's a blurring of the lines of what is life, what is existence, what is and I think that this movie, while familiar, goes down a very different approach, and that it isn't about, a desperation to live, a desperation to proclaim one's existence, which I think Blade Runner is about that. It's Rutger Hauer's Roy is kind of an embodiment of the rage of being dehumanized, even though he lives and he has life. And in this one, it's on the periphery. It's literally, it's a discovery. It's an investigation. It's a procedural into discovering a father discovering a son's intimate thoughts, and realizing that there was a life being lived before, there was a life being lived during, that they were unaware of. And I think there's something so beautiful about that, because Yang as a character, which is a character we discover through memory, and which I think is a very clever idea of how memory serves as film and film serves as memory in this movie, is that he's essentially, what he even says to his daughter, I'm watching a documentary. And what does that mean to him? That cinema becomes the truth of who Yang was, and how he in Yang's afterlife he's discovering the beauty that was his son, and that there was more to this dynamic, and that he appreciated them. He captured memories of them in order to create this kind of fluid thought in his mind, these cherished moments.
Yeah, I mean, the movie is shot through with a kind of real ambiguity
Yeah.
and ambivalence towards certain things, which I think is really one of its biggest strengths, because it doesn't ever really take a lot of positions on any of these
No.
things. Instead, it sort of explores the various ways in which we perceive life and how history and memory and fear of death and all those things kind of play into our understanding of who we are and our relationships with other people.
Yeah.
I mean, so you get these montages, right?
Yeah.
Of Yang's memories, right? And they're very good. They're very well done. Especially, there's one very powerful one at the end, which sort of goes through his whole first kind of life. Right?
Yeah.
That is up to that point sort of unknown.
Yeah, the discovery that there was that this particular unit had been passed, supposedly erased and passed along and along. You start to realize has had numerous lives, at least two before the life he
Including one
lives.
that was sort of much more significant, right?
Much
I even
more.
loved the little trick they did to build the suspense where basically Colin Farrell's character has to keep on compressing files to open up the alpha file, the first file.
Yeah,
Because it's so big, he has so many memories of this life that they had no idea about.
Yeah.
And that appears to have gone on for quite a long time. I
Yeah.
mean, you see people age, and you see this montage of images some of which their significance is very obvious,
yeah,
right? Life and death type stuff, with all these other images where you couldn't know the significance.
Yeah,
or it would be, it's, you can only imagine or impute why Yang thought that, because basically the premise is he can record a certain number of seconds from every day.
yeah.
So he has to choose those moments.
Which recordings
right?
he does.
And so the thought being that these moments of significance, and I thought it was a very accurate representation of how memory works, which is that when you think about what you remember, sometimes it's obvious stuff and sometimes it's really not obvious stuff.
Yeah.
It's just an image or something that out of context would seem
Arbitrary.
not significant,
Yeah.
right? But there is significance, and it's for any of us to sort of think about what that might be.
Yeah.
Right, or why that particular moment. And also to look at images and think about their inherent ambiguity. I mean, there's one image of from Yang's, I mean, it's all from Yang's POV when it's the memories, of him getting ready to take a portrait of the family.
Yeah.
Right? And Colin Farrell's character just watches it over and over again, presumably trying to figure out why this moment.
Yeah.
Why this moment? Why this image? Which, as you say, to bring it back around to the medium, is the central question of film, right? Why that image?
Yeah.
Because you always have to choose. You have to choose one image at a time, right? You only put one set of, colors, set of pixels, whatever, on the screen. Why that image?
Yeah.
Why that moment? What was it about that moment that made it significant? And also, as you say, with the whole memory he kind of will stutter in these scenes where you'll hear the same line 3 or 4 times and see it from different perspectives. How do our memories? Because it's just very subtle distinctions, a slight shift in tone, a slight shift in point of view, and you get this sense of the kind of the plasticity and the amorphous nature of human experience, right?
Yeah.
Two people, and once again, this is shit we all know. Two people can experience the same set of events and have very different recollections, right? Of what actually happened, and certainly what the emotional significance was, or what was at stake, or how it felt, right? Two people can have very different perceptions of that. And the movie just sort of meditates on that, kind of slowly just insinuating through these conversations.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was very excellent and
Yes.
very profound,
Yeah.
right? And it, like I said, it touches on all these things that we are all aware of, but does it in a very evocative and interesting way.
Yeah, and I really appreciated that. Even if I read some write-ups that people were a little frustrated that it didn't give kind of a conclusive nature, but I think you and I would be in agreement that its ambiguity is its power, because these
No, I mean, but the movie's ambiguous. But you mean like the ending?
Yeah.
No, I think the ending is very conclusive. I think if you don't understand what the ending is saying, you just weren't paying attention.
I agree.
Because what's clear at the end is they've both gotten to acceptance. I mean, the movie is the we've talked about a lot of like the thematic and motif issues, but the spine of the movie is about grief.
Yes.
It's about grieving a loss.
Yeah.
Very explicitly. Yeah. And what happens at the end of when you grieve a loss? Well, we all know our Kubler-Ross, right? You get to acceptance.
Yeah.
And when they sit on the couch and they sort of, they're both like, yeah, I miss him too. But,
yeah.
But it's clear that they've both gotten to acceptance.
Yeah.
All right, I mean, that's as plain as day.
Well,
anybody who doesn't realize that is.
And it is an interesting
problems.
blend because, I mean, obviously it's dealing with a lot of complex issues. I think one being the idea of heritage and history. Because while she is an adopted Chinese person, I love the scene where he talks about grafting, which I was like, it goes all the way back to China where you have different apples because you graft different trees together. And that even though it's from a different tree, it becomes naturally a part of this tree. And that's a little, like some people might say it's a little on the nose, but I think it's ingeniously written and crafted into the story because, one, that's how Yang perceives the world in kind of history, but it is a genuine lesson. And it's interesting because Yang, although devised to look Chinese, is not Chinese. And he even asks at one point, he's like, I don't think I am what I have been devised to be. And yet he feels a fealty to that history and a knowledge, and like he has an appreciation. There's beautiful scenes between characters in articulating this kind of idea of displacement in their own consciousness or awareness. And one of them is with Yang and Colin Farrell's character is talking about tea and about what makes him love tea. Yes. And it's like he has this appreciation on like a plugged in and downloaded ability. It's like, oh, I know this knowledge of tea, but I wish I could love this like you do. And it's like, oh, it's there. I welled up a lot in this movie because of it's just effortless beauty about what it's capturing in people and why we connect with each other, why we love the things we do, and how we share those with other people. It's just such a beautiful movie. I can't express it enough.
Well, I also think the criticism of that grafting scene being on the nose is kind of a funny criticism because of course it's on the nose. That's the point.
Yeah.
Yang is an innocent, right?
Absolutely.
He is fundamentally an innocent, right? And so he believes in a very innocent way that using that kind of an analogy or an allegory to connect to a child will help them see something and understand that thing, and it help them move forward with the in what is acknowledged as this difficult situation where she feels between two cultures. She feels not entirely one or entirely the other. She feels some relationship to her adoptive parents, which is loving and parental, but is somehow mitigated by the circumstance of adoption and being from a different culture. All of that is understandable and correct, and so he is not cynical, right? He believes that through this method, he can reach her, and it will help her. And with a child who has not yet been destroyed by the world, it can work.
Yeah.
Something like that can, in fact, reach them. And so that's, to me, the on-the-noseness of it is the point.
I agree.
Right? He's seeking out a way that he thinks he can illustrate to her an important point about the nature of family. The nature of love. Right? And so he uses this analogy.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that it doesn't strike me as a criticism. It's an observation.
Yeah.
But it's very appropriate. Like like if you were programmed to teach a kid, you would do that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Because that's what makes sense.
Yeah.
You can they're not so hardened as to be like, well, what the fuck does that have to do with me? I'm not a tree. Like, oh, that's interesting. Right, that's interesting.
There's something to be said about the form of this film and performance, because it's very muted, and I think purposely so. I think this world, and it's very. I think we've seen a lot of futuristic interpretations. At least I have in doing like a full scale dystopia season. That sometimes you go into kind of an artificiality of your emotions, or it's like kind of removed, and you get the sense that it's Colin Farrell and what is the lovely woman's name? She was in Queen and Slim. Jodie Turner Smith.
That sounds right.
You would get this kind of idea that they can't like express themselves in an overly emotional sense, and obviously the movie is removed of drama and histrionics in this way. But I feel like it really defines a world that has seen so much. It seems like because of the war on the kind of periphery of the story, but also just in a world where everyone is kind of leaning towards the almost robotic sense. Like it's like Yang is a reflection of how everyone wants to act in kind of a formal sense. And so I got the feeling that this world is removed of emotion because we're kind of learning from our technology. We're learning from that kind of borrowed nature. And I found that to be very perceptive about where we're going.
But that house to me felt very much like a house in mourning would feel today.
Yeah.
Not all houses, every family is different.
Yeah.
But people being quiet, people trying to get through the business of their day, people
getting water at night,
people getting upset, but not in a way that's screaming or yelling or histrionic, as you say. It all felt very honest to me.
I agree.
I mean, I'm not saying it's the only way something like that could play out, but it felt true to those characters and what they were going through.
Yeah.
Like, the child's response seemed very real and childlike to me, which is to say that she was extremely distraught at one moment, and then another moment she just wanted to get a fish.
Right? Great child actor.
Yeah, she was
very good.
That is very true to how children are. They can be absolutely consumed by something at one moment, and then be totally unconcerned about it at another moment, and then come back to it. That's very childlike. That sort of short attention span and that kind of shifting from one thing to another.
Yeah.
So it felt, I mean, I agree with you that it definitely was understated, but it only served the movie because it really punctuated those moments. Because both parents get kind of one longer memory scene with Yang in the kind of later half of the movie. And they're both very powerful and very telling and moving.
Yeah.
And they sort of work at opposite ends because the tea scene is the one where Yang comes closest to expressing that sort of desire to be human that you alluded to earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not rooted in something big and broad and philosophical or in some sense of alienation. It's rooted in wanting to have a certain sensual experience,
very personal,
that he can't have, right? Like, wouldn't it be nice to taste something and have an emotional response to the thing I'm tasting?
Yeah,
which is a very human response, right?
I agree.
To taste something and have it evoke or bring to memory something that is very personal, right?
Yeah.
And on the flip side, when the mother has a conversation with him, it's about the power of Yang's perspective, which is that he doesn't really care about how when he dies and if there's nothing left.
Yeah.
That he is at peace with that, and you can tell that she's jealous of that, right? So you get these two sides of the coin, right? Well, maybe there's something better about being Yang too, because he's having some sort of very interesting experience in his life, but he has this radical acceptance of finitude, right? Which is what nobody else is gonna get to, right? Because for humans, we can never really get there, right?
Yeah.
You can do better or worse, but at the end of the day, our own finite nature, the fact that we're gonna die, hangs over our lives and is a source of a lot of anxiety, no matter how well you manage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So she has this, she sees that, and it's as emotional as she gets, right? She sort of wells up as Yang sort of states very comfortably that he doesn't really care.
Yeah, if there's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's so you get, even in that, you get the powerful sense of ambiguity, right? The sense that, it's not a robot longing to be a real boy, right? It's both sides sort of having complex feelings about their various endowments, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I really, you used a word earlier, profound. It's very rare that you get a movie that delves into and has the ability to get into the realm of the profound. And I love movies that try and tackle very complex subjects. I mean, this one is dealing with death. It's dealing with family. It's dealing with culture, history, heritage. All of these memory, meaning, existence, consciousness. A lot of very high philosophical terms, and also contemplative ideas that this movie, and I think what you just expressed is its power comes into relating it into a very human, personal experience. One family, one technosapien, a father, their individual experiences and how they relate to these ideas, and whether or not they themselves understand them in totality. I don't think they do, but it's their wrestling with them that they give to us, the audience, that we also wrestle with these ideas, and the defining nature of them is very loose, and experiencing that gives us a very, at least for me, a very personal, emotional connection to what this was trying to do. Yeah. And I think it succeeds superbly.
Yes.
I think it does.
Well, you can tell that Kogonada is a real student of the game, right?
Because
the movie seems to me to be a very, very strong example of what the medium can accomplish.
Yeah.
Right? In a relatively short time span. And it comes back to another one of my themes I endlessly harp on, which is the power of curiosity. We're going to sit with this family for an hour and a half, and we're just going to pay really close attention to what happens for them in that events that we depict.
Yeah.
We're just gonna watch them, and we're gonna try to be as honest as we can, right, about what that experience will be, and capture that, and do it artfully, and use various cinematic tricks.
Yeah.
Right. The shifting aspect ratios, I like that a lot.
Yeah. Whether there was a phone call in 4:3, whether
it was sort of those little moments of stuttering, the kind of matrixy special effects thing they do when they go into his memory, the kind of repeating things and looping them, but having the looping of them be initiated by one of the characters, right? So it has this additional element of thinking about, well, what is he looking for? Like, what is Colin Farrell trying to find in this particular memory? Why this memory? Right? And even the ending just has this beautiful ambiguity to it, because much of the conflict or forward motion of the movie in the second half is driven by, essentially, Colin Farrell's character takes Yang to a museum. The museum is very interested in him because he has this memory. He's old enough to have this old memory chip, the one that lets him remember a few seconds every day.
Yeah.
That they discontinued at some point because it was considered to be a privacy,
an invasion of privacy
violation. And so he's this old model that has this chip, and the contents of the chip are very interesting to them because they, as we, believe that it's interesting to reflect on why these memories, why these moments, right? Why did they get chosen? And it will reveal something about techno-sapiens. And the family is forced to decide, because they basically want to create a big exhibit about Yang.
Yeah.
And what the family decides is that they don't want the exhibit, they don't want him on display, but they do want to let the museum study his memories.
Yeah.
Which is, to me, is just the perfect resolution to that central conflict for this movie, which is an ambiguous resolution. Like, they think it's unseemly to, like, put his body out there and have it all for public consumption. They feel gross about that.
Yeah, they're giving him this reverence.
But they would rather have, even though it will be compromising to their privacy to have someone look at the memories, they still would like to have someone study them because what does he say? It means something to more than just us.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a very heartwarming resolution that is very uplifting, and it's very affirming of humanity and also of Yang and whatever you want to call his virtues.
Yeah.
His robotic virtues or whatever, to say that we will feel bad. It would feel very undignified to do the thing that you want to do, and it'll make us feel gross. But this other thing, studying him, trying to really understand him and understand how he saw the world and what mattered to him. You know, why we haven't even talked that much about his independent relationship with
Haley Lou Richardson,
which
Data,
the expert at the museum was very surprised by, because she said, well, we don't generally think of techno-sapiens forming these kinds of bonds outside their family. So it's a very life-affirming answer that the family ultimately comes to, right?
Yeah.
Which is to say, the way to respect him and to honor him is by not making a spectacle of him on one hand, but delving in and trying to understand his inner life.
Yeah.
Which is what these memories are this huge key to understanding who he was and how he understood the world, what he valued, what kind of a being he was. But in the end, what I love about the Yang character is that for Yang, if anything, ends up being more intelligible because of this chip to us than other human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you think about someone like your child, right? And this is what's so moving, especially as a father of a young daughter, is that you're obsessed with this person. She is the most important person in your life. But just like every other human being, she's a black box, right? You don't know what goes on in anybody else's head. Even people that, you've been intimate with. I mean, I've been, in a romantic relationship with my wife for like a decade and a half. And at the end of the day, I mean, what is going on in her mind? I mean, think about your own mind and all the sort of insane shit you think every day, and like insane mental detritus. Like, just imagine that your inner monologue and your inner camera, and nobody will ever know .00. They won't know 5 seconds a day of that. They won't know shit about that. And so the knowability and unknowability, even of people that you love deeply and desperately, and how you try to understand them but you can't, and that's sort of the beauty of it, right? Is you're just invested in the mystery of these other people, right? And so I feel like, that's the way in which Yang is not different than us, right?
Yeah.
Is that it's this mystery of other people who are so important to us and yet are fundamentally unknowable.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the movie really gets at what is beautiful about that and also what is melancholy about that. 'Cause
Sure.
It's a melancholy movie.
It is.
It's
yes.
a melancholy movie, and I say that as a melancholy person. Right? So it speaks to my melancholic nature, which is about looking at the world and seeing both what is tremendously beautiful about it and also what is profoundly sad about it. Right? Which I think is, this movie gets at in a very profound and delightful and thought-provoking and interesting and just beautiful way.
Yeah.
over the course of an hour and a half. And I mean, I would just commend this movie to anyone. You can stream it on Showtime. Maybe you can see it in a theater. But I would absolutely recommend this movie without any reservation to anyone with a soul.
Yeah,
if you're
with
soulless,
a soul.
If you're soulless, but maybe if you're I mean, Yang may or may not have a soul. Who knows, right? Maybe nobody has a soul. But if you don't suck, right, you'll probably like this movie.
I'm in agreement that this is, in comparison to what we talked about probably for longer, is like something like the Batman, which has ideas in it that are ventured simplistically and not necessarily at all, and they're kind of throwaway platitudes to ideas.
Mercifully free of ambiguity.
And mercifully free of ambiguity is a very good way of putting it. That this movie, in half its runtime, tackles so much that that still leaves me pondering. That still leaves me
this one will hang
grasping.
With you.
Yeah,
this will hang with you.
And it's there's something really evocative about its form and function, which I think Kogonada is becoming a real master of. Like to have very subtle yet profound implications with character pieces, which that's what he does. He utilizes big grand ideas to focus on the personal and these very articulated characters in their time, place, and function. And there's something really, really fascinating about this filmmaker, and I really hope it doesn't take another 5 years for another, though. If that's what it takes to create such a piece of wonderful art, then take your time, do what you need to do.
We all gotta just be thankful for what we get.
Yeah, and I like that your summary of the beauty and melancholy. I mean, that's just life in its essence. Like, we life is a blend of these two notions, and to understand is not a futile gesture. It might be, we might not necessarily get there. We might not understand someone 100%. We might not understand something 100%. But it's the process, the procedure of understanding, which I think that's what's being ventured with Colin Farrell in the movie, and he articulates that curiosity, that yearning, and we go along for that ride, and it is very soulful. It is a very soulful experience.
And that's when people want love, that's what they want. They want people to be interested in them.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think? How do you feel? That's love. That's love.
Absolutely.
That's what people want when they want love. They want someone to care about them.
Yeah.
Not in some way of like, I'll support you or I'll give you a hug. I mean, those things matter. But it's like, people want to be seen, and they want people to want to see them and want to understand them. And to the extent to which you convey that to people, that is the expression of love.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? That's the love that people are looking for, is someone to give a shit. Right? About like, why do you like this? Why don't you like this? Why do you feel this way? Right? And so yes, the movie is about Colin Farrell's character being able to re-engage with that, with his family in a way.
Family, with Yang, with himself.
With Yang, with his daughter, ultimately,
Yeah.
right? The re-engaging on this very human level.
Yeah.
Which is about a lot of small things, right? It's a lot of little conversations in the middle of the night about how you like to get water. That's love. And so that's what this movie is about. It's about what it is to really love someone, and what that looks like on a moment-to-moment, day-to-day basis, right? Which is, like I said, expressed in a lot of very small, quiet moments, not in grand gestures or histrionics to once again use your world. So I think the movie captures that. It felt as someone from a relatively similar family, at least in some ways, minus the android. It resonated.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think it can resonate with a lot of people. I do highly recommend it. Go support it. Go watch it. It's, I think, my favorite movie of the year so far. Which
really the best thing I've seen in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a low. I mean, obviously, there's not a lot of contenders because we're early in. Although I did see Worst Person in the World. That was excellent as well.
Well, I guess that's technically a last year movie.
I know. If I had to revise my list of last year's, it would make the top 10 of last year for absolutely. So you're right. There's a different category,
what is time?
What is time? Yeah. Well, great. We got through now. We're back.
We're back.
We're doing it.
Hopefully, if you could, Hollywood, if you could release some more movies that don't suck soon. Or send us like screeners of movies that are coming out.
Maybe.
We'll review them. We'll review them early. If you send, I will say, if you send us a screener, I am 5% more likely to give your movie a positive review. I won't guarantee it, but I will. I will increase the probability by 5%.
Probability, yeah. The convenience. It's like a convenience fee.
Yeah, I'll give you a little uptick. Like if I think it's bad, I'll leave out one thing that I think is bad about it. Or if I think it's okay, I'll say it's a little bit better than okay. I will give it a slight upgrade. That'll be your compensation for sending me a screener so we can review movies before they come out and be cool like that. So if you want to do that, please do that. Otherwise, just put them in the theater or put them somewhere where we can see them. I know that I don't know that much is going to release this Friday because I guess the Batman just rolls merrily along.
I think we'll if we want to get together to talk the new Pixar movie, we can. There might be an indie or so, but yeah, I'll venture.
There's always movies. We haven't talked about the Kurt Warner movie, so we can go back to that one.
I don't know if I want to. All right, well, Up-to-Date Cinephile with Ben Thelen, Dead Reckoner podcast. I'm Kyle Bruehl. I know movies and you don't. We'll see you next time.